got to 9:30. My watch is actually running a bit slow. Welcome everybody to today's Koata Hātepe Regulatory Process Committee meeting. Tēnā koutou katoa nā mai ki te tui o te konehira o pōneke e tēnei rā. Please let me, committee members, please let me or Democracy Services know if you intend to leave the meeting. We will have morning tea actually after all the public participants have had their say. We have got a lot of people in the gallery. Thank you for coming. This will probably mean morning tea is at around about 11 because we do have a lot of people who want to speak to us. I will now start with the karakia. Whakatakati hou ki te uru, whakatakati hou ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hahu, tihei, Māori ora. We do have some apologies. So we have apologies for absence from Mayor Whānau, who's on very important council business. We have an apology for lateness from Councillor Paul, who'll probably be here around 10. Apologies for lateness from Pauiwi Liz Kelly, who'll probably be here after morning tea. And I think possibly a small absence from Councillor McNulty, who just has something else to pop out to. Also another vaguely related council business. I'm not aware of any others. Are there any others? No. I move that we accept those apologies. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Pauiwi Holden. I now put that motion, which has been moved and seconded. Could you please vote? Well, are we done there? Yes. Nuridan. Nuridan, if you want to, you can just signal with a hand. Oh, you've done it. I declare that motion carried. Do I have any conflict of interest declarations? Don't see any. Confirmation of minutes. I move the motion that this committee approves the minutes of the Koata Hātepe Regulatory Processes Committee meeting held on the 11th of May 2023, having been circulated and that they be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McNulty. I'll put that motion. Nuridan, are you voting yes to that? Yes, okay. It's just taking its time coming across the internet. There we go. Thank you very much. That's been unanimous. Oh, right. So we will now move to. There are no items not on the agenda, so we'll now move to public participation. So thank you, everybody. We do have quite a few people, so we've had to make a fairly strict rule. Normally, we would only allow an hour of public participation in total, so we have had to make a rule that it's 5 minutes per person. That will go by very quickly. So if you want to also allow time for questions, that has to be included in the 5 minutes. So I do warn you, your time will go by quite quickly, and the questions are often quite useful to us because it gives us a chance to clarify anything we haven't understood. The time will be up there or over there, and you're welcome to come to either the podium or sit at the table. So I'd now like to call to the table or podium Tricia Smith. Thank you, Tricia. And if you want to push the button on your mic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does that work? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. I can start. I'm very conscious of the 5 minutes.
That's all right.
First of all, kia ora. Thank you so much for allowing me to be heard in support of my submission, and thank you so much to the officers for their report. I would like the committee to consider delaying action in terms of taking away the parking spaces in Imlay Crescent until a number of other alternative measures have been tried. I don't disagree that the access for services such as ambulance and fire is extraordinarily important to our communities, but I think that taking away the 17 parking spaces is going to exacerbate current problems. I understand you have a parking policy that is looking at parking in a more holistic sense, and I'd like the committee to consider whether this would be a good pilot for that. Imlay Crescent is cut into the hillside, which means that a lot of the residents on the east side do not have off-street parking, nor do they have the option of actually getting off-street parking. At the moment, it seems that the proposal has gone to the residents rather than the homeowners themselves. Residents can vote with their feet. Homeowners, however, have quite a bit more skin in the game, if you like, in terms of the decision. So it would be great to cast the net a little wider than what it has been done so far. I support the submission within the pack here that talks about tradies vehicles. They have been an issue. I also note that that particular residence, they've got a skip that cuts off the parking, which is also in front of off-street parking as well, so we have a double whammy. I also note that we in Kenya Road have now got bicycle lanes, which is fantastic, but that's further constricting parking in the area. And a lot of the streets in Nio are narrow, so the next street that you would access Imlay Crescent is Abbott Street with the school, which is already at maximum parking. It's very narrow and it's very hard to move. So in summary, if you could consider other ways, whether it's signage, asking residents and homeowners to be aware that access is a problem and that there are alternatives, and if people could perhaps be more mindful of where they park their vehicles and how they park them. As I say, in terms of other alternative measures, whether you would want to introduce residents parking only so that those that do have off-street parking that aren't using it can take advantage of what they have on site, whereas the rest of us get a chance at parking. I live up 80 steps, and I'm not the worst residents in the street, and we also have a mixture of children and older people. So as I say, we have vulnerable people within the community, we have access issues anyway that we don't have a choice for, and I really would hope that the committee can consider Imlay Crescent in that wider sense of what you're trying to achieve in Nio. I will note in terms of modal changes in transport, we do have relatively good transport. I've been in the area for 20 years, but actually the services have declined. In some respects, this isn't an issue about transport. At the end of the day, we seem to see a modal shift from petrol to electric cars, so this issue isn't going to disappear. So if I could just put those before the committee and just acknowledge, look, I'm in favour of template. I love templates, they're great, they help us make sure that we consider all the issues. But I do know in the template that you're considering us with the Northland, not Nio district, under the council policy, and your last three submissions seem to come from Mount Cook and Newtown. While it's important that everybody has their say, I don't believe that if that's where they are, that they are directly affected in the same way that I am as a homeowner and a resident.
I'll ask you a quick one, and Councillor Chung has a quick one as well. You mentioned residents parking. Would you consider it fair if we gave priority for the coupons to the people who haven't actually got the off-street parking?
Yes, absolutely. Because I moved into the area 20 years ago. I would have made a different choice if there was no parking. 80 steps is quite a lot to navigate, and to navigate a series of streets before you get to the 80 steps, for some people, will be a deal breaker.
Okay, and Councillor Chung, you do have time for a quick one.
Thanks very much, Tricia. Could you tell us about some of the inconveniences that you would face if the car parks were actually removed?
If you take away 17 car parks, I think you actually take away probably half the parking. So I would have to, so I actually live down, if you know Imlay Crescent, it's actually, there's steps in between it. So the nearest parking would be for me to go all the way back out and park on Abbott Street. So, yeah.
But strict.
Yeah, so yes, it would be really inconvenient for things like shopping if I had kids.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to call up, please, Patrick Morgan. Thank you, Patrick.
That one. Start again, changing the batting order. Good to see you all this morning. Here talking about the unresolved safety issues where Rāroa Crescent meets Chater Street and Curtis Street. So this has been a crash, black area, for as long as I can remember. I know your paper records a number of recorded crashes. If you go back further, there's a whole bunch more. And we also note that probably only 1 in 6 of these crashes gets recorded in the crash database. So this is really one of our top priorities for making this a safer intersection. Today we're not talking about a big fix of the intersection, that will come further down, but today you get to decide on an interim fix, which includes changing parking on Chater. To be clear, Cycle Wellington is in favour of that, so please go ahead with that. It's a pretty straightforward decision for you. I think weighing up the safety of vulnerable road users on a known dangerous intersection is a pretty straightforward decision for you. I want to acknowledge too, Felix, I guess he's talking after me. He rides this route pretty frequently, and you might have seen his graphic videos of near misses along there. You've actually got 2 intersections quite close together, and it just overloads road users with what's going on. So complex intersection, the volume of traffic and the speed of the traffic means this intersection is unsafe by design. So the job for the council is to fix that, and I know you're looking at a bigger fix in due course. Speed reduction, of course, would be massively helpful here because people have longer to assess what's going on, to see what's coming, and avoid any potential conflict. I'll leave it there. Any questions? Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much, Patrick. These accidents that have occurred at that intersection, do you know, or have you looked into the cause of them?
Yeah, sure. So 3 factors there. There's a lot going on. The volume of traffic and the speed of traffic makes it difficult for road users to work out what's going on. Just one point where we prefer to use the word crash rather than accident. Accident is really I know it's in common usage, but often it has the implication that this is something that's unpredictable, something we can't fix. And in road safety, it's really the job of the road designers and the people who manage the road, so in this case that's the council, to design our streets for zero harm. We know what the issues are here, and it's the job of the council to fix that. With today's decision for a minor change to parking on Chater Street, you can take a small step in that direction. Go down there, Ray. I'll come down there with you and see what's going on. You'll see that people are looking for what's coming, and they feel the pressure of time to get across the intersection, and sometimes humans make mistakes. This is not about blaming individual road users. The responsibility is with the council to make our streets safe.
Are there any further questions? No, I think that you've been quite clear. And sorry, I should have probably explained that we did jump a sequence there just a tiny bit because you were here and Felix isn't yet. We're hoping to hear from him later when he comes. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much. I think now we're moving, if it's all going to plan. Have we got Felix in the room yet? No. So, okay. So we're moving to John, if we may. John Fawn, welcome.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for having me to speak. I'm going to speak to Traffic Resolution 6623. I'm going to take my submission as read, and I'm going to use today's presentation to focus on the key issues at stake in this proposal. The most critical issue is that we need a zebra crossing. Evans Bay Parade is a very busy road, and it is not able to be crossed safely. The community in Weka Bay comprises of many families with young children, including a child with a disability who is wheelchair-bound, elderly and professionals. In Weka Bay, approximately 40 residents live up Pāhia Street, which is a pedestrian-only access route up 100+ steps. There is no drive-on access. There are many different issues at stake in Weka Bay, including improved access through residents' parking scheme. From discussion with the council, I understand that these are already being addressed as part of a separate and wider parking management plan. The key point that the committee needs to be aware of is that the proposed crossing point with Central Refuge Island, 1, is in the wrong and unsafe location, 2, is not the type of crossing that is required to provide safe and practical access for residents up Pāhia Street. As per my email to Council on 30 May, my analysis of the Council's imagery found that there are insufficient sight lines for vehicles coming round the corner to Ballina Bay, or so I should say, from Ballina Bay towards the crossing from the north, currently being developed just to the north of 122 Evans Bay Parade. It is more appropriate to locate the crossing further to the south, directly opposite Pāhia Street steps. This move to the south would achieve approximately double the sight lines, about 110 metres versus 56. This is also the natural crossing point where residents currently use. The committee needs to be very cognizant that sight lines matter, especially here. Vehicles have regularly been seen crashing over the top of the temporary traffic island, which is where the permanent one will be put. Sight lines are not a nice to have, but are essential to saving life and limb. Because it is unsafe, I would not use the proposed crossing point, neither would I allow my children to use the crossing point. In fact, many of the other residents I've spoken to don't like the proposed crossing point, don't like the location of the proposed crossing point, and if the community doesn't like it and aren't going to use it, then it needs to be moved. The other main issue is that there are simply too many vehicles using Evans Bay Parade for a crossing point with the refuge island to work. Just like what's being developed in Kio Bay to the south and what is proposed to Ballina Bay into the north, Weka Bay also needs a zebra crossing. Young children, disabled and elderly simply need a zebra crossing to safely get across. I gather that there might be concerns that it is not wide enough to create a pedestrian crossing directly opposite Pāhia Street. Sorry. The committee needs to be aware that the width of the road in Weka Bay is exactly the same as in Kio Bay, where a zebra crossing has been developed. In other words, 15.4 metres. I also gather the council may be concerned that there aren't sufficient numbers of pedestrians to warrant a zebra crossing. Pedestrians numbers are part of the equation, but not everything. Waka Kotahi states that selecting appropriate crossing facilities requires a comprehensive and context-sensitive approach. To date, the council has not done this. The council has not even consulted with us about a zebra crossing or a crossing generally, and construction has already started. I have asked the council for a copy of their numbers, but I still haven't received them. Either way, this committee needs to look beyond the numbers and consider the difference between, hypothetically, say 50 people crossing Kio Bay as part of their lunchtime run or walk versus 40 residents required to cross Weka Bay in order to get access in and out of their homes. Arguably, the people out for a walk or a run have a choice to cross if they can safely. For the residents of Pāhia Street, we have no such choice.
I just need to tell you, you've only got a wee bit of time left.
I'm on par. There are no other options, safe or otherwise. Further, the development of the cycleway and the loss of parking on the hillside of Evans Bay has increased the number of people needing to cross Evans Bay to access their vehicles on the seaward side of Weka Bay. In addition, cyclists, including my kids on their way to school each day, will need to cross to get access to the cycleway. Final point. There is no downside to anyone having a zebra crossing, but the benefits of improved safety and practical access for users are significant. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you did very, very well and made some really clear points, but we don't have enough time for questions. But thank you, John. Thank you. Right, now I'd like to invite, please, Hilary.
Hi, everyone. I might stand here. Yes.
You're very welcome.
Is this one on?
Yep.
Okay. Kia ora, everyone. Kia ora, kia ora. I'm Hilary. I live up the top of Pāhia Street steps. I live up 166 steps. This is what I use to get my groceries. The shops don't deliver up our path. They refuse. You know, there's no delivery. Couriers do not come up. Couriers, in fact, may not even try and park up temporarily to drop off a parcel. Chemist deliveries don't really happen because they just know it's just impossible for them. So we only have to go to a courier depot and pick up. It's crazy. Okay, right. Main point. The pedestrian island, as it is, will probably last 2 months. The plastic cones that sort of apparently protect pedestrians and alert the traffic that there's a pedestrian island there are like 4 millimetres thick of plastic. Last night I crossed at the the island, we'll call it. I wouldn't call it a safety island. I'd call it a risk your life and limb island. I stood there, it was, 6 o'clock, full traffic going through. 8,000 cars a day? Yep, I reckon it's more like 10,000. At the moment, it's a 30k zone because of the wonderful work that Downer are doing to put the bike lane in. The bike lane's great. I've no problems with that. What I do have problems with is when I stood on the pedestrian island last night with my trolley full of stuff. It took me a bit to get across the first section, having to wait for the cars coming from town, the city, from the north. And when I got to the island, trying to cross to the landward side of the road, that's the Pāhia Street side, a heavy vehicle, a double-trailered vehicle, two things, trolleys, trailers. It was transporting one of those great big culverts, a culvert, 6 feet wide culvert. I don't know where it was going. It possibly had come from some industrial site in Miramar somewhere. It couldn't actually navigate around the pedestrian island where I was. I had to step back into the traffic for it to manoeuvre around the corner or where the pedestrian island is. The driver saw me on the pedestrian island. He didn't actually see it was a pedestrian island. He wound his window down and yelled at me and said, "Get off the effing road." He did not even, this is a heavy goods vehicle, did not even realise it was a pedestrian island. He was too high to even see if indeed the flashy stuff was even seen. Anyway, I'll move on. I'll be quick. Questions, whatever. We
will have some.
Yep, great. We have parking issues. I have to park my car somewhere on Maida Vale Road, which is crossing onto the seaward side, walking along probably 200 metres to the proposed crossing area at Ballina Bay. Then I would cross at the proposed pedestrian crossing at Ballina Bay. Then I would have another 100 metres up a zigzag path onto Maida Vale to get to any possible car parking. Then I might have another 50 metres to find a car park. So I'm walking my trolley approximately 600 metres to get to my vehicle, 600 metres to bring my shopping in. I'm not young. I don't know whether I can do this. It's not a case of me choosing to live there with that access. I'm a renter. I'm a long-term renter. I have no financial interest in improving the access to the properties. I have a concern about my safety. I sent a report to the police. I've rung the police saying the 30k zone is not being applied, and let's get Wellington moving, have absolutely no consideration that it's going to go to a 30k zone for the new speed restrictions, because they say it's part of State Highway 1, effectively. Thanks.
So thank you, Hilary. You've made some very impassioned and some good case for something reconsideration. But we've come to the end of our time. Thank you. All right. So welcome to Councillor Paul. I'd like to also welcome to the table now Jonathan. So we've got a little bit of a change up here. So if you don't mind, Jonathan, coming a bit early. I see you in the gallery. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kia ora koutou. As you mentioned, my name's Jonathan. I grew up on Kaitahi land near the Wairau River. I grew up in a country area, walking around as a kid, Raurangi Beach, singing the complete works of Andrew Lloyd Webber, looking out at Wellington, dreaming of a career in the arts. And I've lived in Wellington off and on for now over nearly coming up to 35 years of working in the industry. Of course, I was actually looking at the Wairarapa. My geography wasn't too good at that time. But currently, I'm the CEO at Bats Theatre, which is the busiest theatre in Wellington. We operate from early January through to the end of December, with festival periods such as the recent Kia Mau Festival, allowing us to present as many as 10 presented works per week. And this year we scheduled 111 different productions. They're separate productions, 5 residencies and a lot of events in our Lumen Bar. We support the Cycleway, and we really support the council's work to increase safety for cyclists. A lot of us are cyclists. However, as we've worked over the last year with the design team, we've been trying to mitigate the impact of losing the access to a loading zone and mobility park right outside our doors. And unfortunately, the reality is that it's creating a lot of safety issues and does create barriers for people with disabilities to participate in art making and viewing the work in our premises. So we really welcome the new positioning at Marchbank Street as it's not so a greater distance to Roxburgh Street, and we see it as a key interim measure and really back it. However, we want to state that the removal of a safe and appropriate loading zone significantly increases the chance of harm for both the public that are walking in the egress and also the people that are participating in the arts. And as I said earlier, it creates quite a barrier and a difficulty at a very perilous time for the arts, which I'll speak of in a little bit. Also want to point out that most of the participants and staff at BATS are young people, and there are concerns around the lighting in that area and around safety of being away from the security cameras outside our premises when they're being picked up late at night. So once again, that's another reason why a closer loading zone or mobility park to Marchbank Street is really important. It's good to point out that no other successful theatre venue in Wellington operates without an appropriate loading zone, so this is quite a challenge for us. We support the maximum P30 limit, talking to the design team and understanding how that will work. We want to work with parking infringement and the council at making that work, because obviously if we have about 5 crew members for a show, then the average pack-out time where currently the loading zone sits is 1 to 2 hours. Our assessment now that will be at least doubled. So we're looking at 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 hours of packing in and packing out. Often their pack-outs are happening at night. And we're dealing with people who don't necessarily are well-funded. They're emerging artists, or the reality of arts is quite a grim picture. The recent survey published last year shows that while the median salary for New Zealanders is $61,000, the average earning for an artist is $37,000. And in actual fact, from their art making is only $19,000. So that's $19,000 per annum that people are earning from their art making, and many are investing in the shows. So there isn't the luxury of having extra personnel to be able to assist in this. This brings me to the mobility park. I mean, the suitable mobility car parks for artists participating in art making and seeing art is very important for BATS. We're increasing under the Ahotini scheme our involvement with disabled artists, and their work is astonishing. Over three of the 7 co-pro productions that we got through additional funding after COVID were presented by disabled artists and have subsequently toured to other centres. And if we go back to the latest reports on the salaries, we go a step down, with the average income for disabled artists being $15,000 per annum. And obviously the costs of engaging in this in society in terms of coming to theatre or to the restaurants or participating in art making, those costs are a lot more than able-bodied people. So we support the increase of mobility parks and encourage the council to bring more than one in our area. When we think of the Embassy, the Hannah, our vibrant cafe and restaurant scene, one mobility park at the bottom of Marshbank Street does not seem to be enough. We support the P60 limit, and also we encourage that reasonable enforcement be undertaken to ensure that the appropriate time can be ensured for artists to come and make work, but also to participate and see. If they want to go for a bite to eat, then obviously it's going to be over an hour to go and see a show. And basically,
you will need but you will need to make your last points.
Yeah, so my last point is perfect. My last point is we also support a no-tolerance approach to any abuse of the mobility park. It is really important that our artists and our community know that there is somewhere they can go so that they can access the wonderful things that can happen in the CBD. Thank you.
Thank you very much, because that's given us quite a good understanding of some of your challenges, which we really appreciate, so thank you. I'd like now to invite, is it Carl? Have we got up to Carl? Who are we at? Now, Carl might be attending online. No? Okay, the next one would be Kristen. Kristen, sorry, we are just trying to juggle who's actually here and who we're expecting. But thank you, Kristen. You're welcome.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Kristen Leslie, tōku ingoa. This is my neighbour Tanya. We have some pictures because we'd like to illustrate some of the challenges that we're facing around our bus stop 6570, which of course you are discussing today. First thing about it, it's a very low use bus stop. There are 304 users per month that alight at this stop. There's a beautiful picture on the second page of the thing that Tanya is putting around you. The locals know their area. We actually surveyed every single house that is closest to this bus stop, and of which there are 93. In that survey, we found every single one of them have extensive steps. The topography is hilly. We have the radio signal at the top of Mount Victoria in our back garden, actually. That's right where we are. And in that survey, we identified that about 30 houses in the immediate area are close enough to obviously be using it or to be actively using it. 17 of them have submitted in opposition to this change that is proposed. And the reason that we are opposed is because we are concerned about safety on the corner, just as Metlink, who prepared the council submission, are. But we believe that the response is completely disproportionate, as it will result in the removal of parking. So the safety issue is paramount for all of us. You will see from this picture that the bus does come over the centre line. The reason it does this, if you go to the first page, is because people can park, and because people are dumb, they do park right on the corner. That white vehicle is this morning's problematic vehicle. We absolutely would like to have yellow lines around the top of that corner to Hapara Street, the top of Hapara Street, which is a legal street, even though it doesn't have any road access, to prevent safety issues. However, we do not wish for the bus stop to move, because that will remove parking. And like many of the other submitters this morning, we have young people, we have people with work issues, including Tanya, who'll speak in a moment, who would prefer that to be considered, or other options. I've spoken to NZTA about the the guidelines that the council referred to in their submission. They said the guidelines are designed for building and growth in challenging to plan hilly and challenging spaces, and that absolutely people need to consider holistically the impact. The holistic impact would be moving cars onto less safe parts of Alexandra Road, which is curvy and narrower, which we already see happening when there's, extra users and road users at the time. And if you've driven that Alexandra Road, it can be quite challenging, not just where we are, but many bits in both directions and going down onto Palliser Road towards Oriental Bay. We think the present proposal is ill thought out and doesn't consider the holistic impacts. We have actually identified a few other options we'd happily discuss with Metlink that would resolve that problem. I'm going to pass over to Tanya to talk about the impact this would have on her and
Hi, so I'm Tanya Gardner. I'm a resident of Alexandra Road. I've lived there for 4 years. I'm a health professional whereby I work from home and I service the Wellington and Greater Wellington area. For me, I have a company car of which I need to park. I need to carry my files and everything with me. My house is down the Hātepe Street path, so I don't have road access like many other houses down that area. And so for me, being able to park within, 50, 60 metres of my house is important. If this bus stop comes in, it takes it longer for that. I also have to carry groceries and heavy gas bottles and everything to my house, so it just seems very much an inconvenience for what the bus service provides. Now, I've used the bus service and I've also cycled that route, and it's not a pleasant experience. One, where the buses don't turn up, and secondly, if you are on a bike going up that road, it's quite dangerous. One of the options that I would like to think is the buses are too large for that particular road, and they're not fit for purpose. We should have smaller buses, and we'll probably get more people on them.
Any questions?
I do have a quick one. There was some suggestion with the submitters that have already given information that maybe this bus stop isn't even required, or you could do with it. But I find that surprising because we often have the opposite view that we don't want to take out bus stops. So but I'd be interested in some feedback on that.
There is another double bus stop 50 metres back towards where the turn-up is to the lookout, and this submission is not, there's 3 bus stops up for consideration here. The set outside number 25, and then another bus stop further along that is 100 metres further along. So actually there's 3 bus stops within 400 metres, all going in both directions. However, yes, there seems to be an excessive number of bus stops, actually. But we still need the safety on the corner. So.
Yeah, sure. I'll hand over, thank you for that. I'll hand over to Councillor Chung, but it'll need to be Councillor Calvert. But yeah. So.
Thank you. It's probably something similar to what we've heard from other submitters, but how could we have engaged better with you?
Oh my God, yes. Right, so this is the second time this came up. It came up in August last year. First of all, there were a whole pile of submissions, many more submissions than on the 17 on this one. And we gave advice at that time. It would have been great if Metlink had engaged with us, because actually, as a policy analyst myself, I could happily have shared the analysis that we've done, the contact we've done with the community and our views. Metlink didn't communicate with us, and then when this went out for submission, you might see from the submissions in your pack, we put up signs and drivers were tearing them out of the bus stop. So actually, I have a massive chip on my shoulder about how engagement has been done on this, especially the lack of recognition for the previous engagement.
Okay, so I'd just like to say that is Metlink, but we will give that feedback and we'll see what conclusion we come to today. So thank you.
Thank you. I understand Metlink also wrote the council position. You'll see the track changes in your pack where it was changed to a council position.
Oh, I see. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you. So we do have, I think,
Sorry, apologies. I'm a little bit late.
That's okay.
Where do I go?
You're welcome to sit either at the table or at the podium, whatever makes you feel more comfortable.
I'll stay at the podium.
Okay.
Yeah, who? So,
now, you do only have 5 minutes, and I tell you it will go by really fast.
Firstly, just as an aside, I want to address there are you referred to bus stops within 400 metres. In Pāhia Street, remember by the time you've gone up Pāhia Street and along the cliff, you can already be walking 200 or 300 metres to get to your house. Now, my concern with the whole situation at Pāhia Street is that, for all that I am in total support of cycleways, I think that a variety of users need to be considered to a greater level. And I travel that route. I no longer live at Pāhia Street. On one occasion, my car was written off. I was trying to get garden supplies up and was driving up and down. And this is before the parking became so dire, driving up and down Evans Bay to Oriental Bay and back, and then eventually parked outside a bus stop and a truck came around the corner and wiped out my car. But my concerns are relating to health and safety. So there are 50 people that live up Pāhia Street. There is also land that has been given subdivision resource consents. And I think while our parking has been compromised, it is still necessary to have reasonable vehicle access to property for maintenance purposes, ambulances, rubbish collection, and a variety of other reasons. Now, at the moment, if you look at the plan, I don't know if anyone can pull it up, you can see some parks with a 60-minute loading zone have been left. Now, several of those parks are going to go because they're in front of a vacant lot. So they're very short term anyway. But the problem is the situation is already dire for the people living up there. There have been multiple accidents. A young woman was hit getting groceries. She parked on Maidvale Road. It's a dangerous corner, getting groceries, and she would have been walking maybe 300 metres to get to her place. Now, one of the other reasons I feel that we are duped is because the land that is Pāhia Street, which is the width of a legal road, was donated for the purposes of a road a long time ago, back at the time that the land was actually subdivided. And it wasn't until the 70s that a concrete path was put in. But at the time also a bus stop was put in which blocks off the legal road, and a power sump, which makes it expensive if residents wanted to get together and build some kind of parking in that area. But right now, we're left in a situation where that property could potentially become derelict. It's like 60 minutes to expect a plumber. I had just in the last week a pipe repaired. It should have been a 15-minute job. It took an hour and a half because it took a team of people to carry stuff backwards and forwards up the hill. They had to be there for more than 60 minutes, so it wouldn't work. But those parks are going to disappear anyway. So I'm not saying that every resident should have their own car park, but when driveways get put in down by the road, and the parking in that area has been eroded over a number of years, that road frontage is actually reserved for those that have car parks. Now, the bus stop is placed in a position that is utterly inappropriate for anybody living in Pāhia Street. It's like you have to get off the bus at one end, walk to the other end of the bay to the bus stop, cross the road, and then walk back in the opposite direction. So you're adding, 300 or 400 metres onto what is already a 400 or 500 metre walk. So in multiple ways, I feel that we are duped, but it gets down to conditions up there are becoming impossible. It's not worth the usage of that cycleway. I drive along Oriental Bay and round to Weka Bay and through to Kilburnie on the way home every day at about 1 o'clock. And in the last few weeks, I've done cycle counting, and I drive also at about 3 or 4 o'clock. And I can say that I have, on one occasion, passed 6 bikes in the whole 5 kilometre stretch. On wet days, no bikes. And yes, so when it's completed, hopefully there will be more cyclists. But it's obtuse for the amount of usage. And if you're in Oriental Bay, where there are many cyclists, sometimes, there are 30, 40 plus pedestrians, plus dog walkers, they're all mixed up. They're all doing multiple sharing. But somehow, where there is a less dense number, it's like, no, it's got to be a free run for the cyclists at the expense of everybody else.
So you all need to make your final points. Sorry, but we're running out of time.
I just think that the primary users of that bay are the people that live there, and they need to be treated fairly and safely, and property needs to be maintained, and there needs to be more vehicle access than there is already. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much for those points made very clearly, I must say. Now, do we have Carl? We do have Carl Frost online. Welcome, Carl. Haven't quite got you showing up yet, but I'm sure that will happen.
Yeah, not a problem. Tēnā koutou, thanks for the opportunity to address the meeting. My name's Carl Frost, President of the Strathmore Park Residents Association, speaking about the Menorgan Road pedestrian crossing traffic resolution in the list. And I just wanted to, I think, highlight a few key points regarding this proposed resolution. We've had a lot of discussions over the years at our Residents Association meetings about road safety generally in our suburb, and Menorgan Road has always been highlighted as one of the key, I suppose, issues, being one of our two main feeder roads in and out of the suburb, and the importance of it as well, having Scots College, a playground, and a major access for to Kaharangi Primary School further over on Strathmore Avenue. So for those reasons, it's always been highlighted as a major issue in terms of road safety. Pedestrian safety in particular. So it's great to see all of the feedback in response to the proposed resolution was supportive of crossing. I did note that a few people queried the location, and indeed there are still some issues about that, but it was great to see that feedback was positive, and a consistent commentary on, again, the concerns regarding pedestrian safety, especially and school children, which is definitely a lot of school children using that road. Also note that the traffic engineers report highlighted the benefits of a positive change by installing a pedestrian crossing here. So all I'd like to really say is that we hope you support this resolution, and the work can be actioned in a timely manner. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carl. It's nice and succinct. Do we have any questions? No. It's nice to hear some, really positive feedback about, something that has been on the community wish list for quite a few years. So thank you for coming and support.
It's been really great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right.
Ciao.
Thanks. So we're moving now. We are actually running a little ahead of time. We're moving now to Patrick, if he's in the room. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Sharp. I live in Alexandra Road, very close to my neighbours, Kristen and Tanya, who just spoke. Thank you for bringing us all together in common cause. It's very nice to meet your neighbours. There's been a proposal to move bus stop 6570, and I am speaking in opposition to that move. Because Kristen and Tanya have already covered off a number of points which I wanted to speak about, I'm going to try and shorten this down so that if you have any further questions, you have a bit of time. So the street that we're talking about, Alexandra Road, has one side which is going towards the top of Mount Victoria, and it is basically a vertical cliff. Then we have a narrow road, and then there's a 45-degree, sometimes a bit less, slope that goes down the hill towards the sea. The road itself is very narrow, and it winds in and around Mount Vic. And so as a result of that, on one side of the street you get blind corners in several places. For the most part, all the cars park on the low side of the road, the other side of the road where those blind corners aren't. And as a result, that usually works out. Sometimes, when we run out of parks on the low side of the road, people park on the other side of the road, or on the corners of the low side of the road. And invariably that causes some kind of obstruction, particularly to large passenger vehicles. So just 150 metres from bus stop 6570, which is the one being proposed to be moved, is bus stop 6569. 6569 is on flat land, which is amazing up there. It's wide and straight road. It has a standard curb height. It's adjacent to a small park with a lovely view, and it's close to pedestrian routes to the summit of Mount Victoria. It's the best bus stop in the area for accessibility. It's 90 seconds walk away, and there are 8 houses between those 2 stops. Now, to me, it seems that this stop that we're talking about moving is unnecessary and could be removed quite happily. However, whether it's in the power of this council to do that, I'm not sure. Last night, I got home about 9 o'clock at night, and I thought I'd do a quick walk around the area and just see how many car parks are there and in use. There are about 20 good car parks within about 150 metres of bus stop 6570. And about 4 to 6 dodgy ones, 4 to 6 because they're all, a mess. Of those, about 3 or 4 were available. When I got up at 6 o'clock this morning, only 1 or 2 were. So there is quite a bit of congestion in this area. Removing 7 car parks so close to bus stop 6570 are basically going to cause a lot of congestion for people in the area. And as Tanya has pointed out, there are a lot of houses in the area, including my own, which off-street parking is impossible, or even close on-street parking. So this is going to affect a lot of people in the area. The benefit of that is 90 seconds saving. Now, if we park on the dodgy side of the road, there are no lights over there. You have these blind corners. You have a lot of places where people can't see. And even for someone like myself, getting out of the car and running across the road when something could be coming around the corner is dangerous. One of the things pointed out in the consultation is that this is going to help support older people, people who are pregnant, and people with babies. Now, I can run across the road, but if I'm trying to juggle a baby as well at the same time, that's going to be very, very dangerous, and people are going to be in danger as a result. Anyway, I'll stop talking now. I want you to reject this plan. Do you have any questions?
I feel as if we should have questions. Oh, we have from Councillor Calvert.
Yes, just probably along the vein of my previous question, but would it help if there was a sort of an engagement exercise between the council and Metlink with the local residents and connecting area to actually try and find a workable solution?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is all I think we really want, is the ability to actually talk to someone and talk through what's going on there.
So I do have a question. I actually went up there this morning to see what was going on and followed a bus. It seems to me the bus stops are a little bit patchy, like there's, as you're saying, quite a few just there, but actually I'm not sure how many bus stops there are in other parts. Do you feel there's actually a case for looking at the whole route in terms of the provision of stops and how it's being managed?
Yeah, I wouldn't be an expert on the whole route, but certainly in that area, you've got one bus stop, 150 metres or 100 metres away, you've got the next bus stop, and then you have another one 300 metres after that. The one in the middle is quite dodgy. But yeah, look, I think it would be sensible.
Okay, thank you. We have run out of time.
Thanks.
But thank you. Now we're moving to, I think we're up to Chris. Am I correct? Chris McMoran, welcome.
Thank you very much, and kia ora. And it seems like I'm the fourth person talking about the same bus stop, so it sounds like we're getting somewhere with that at least. But thank you for allowing us to speak. My neighbours and my partner as well have already discussed a lot of the issues that we have with this decision to remove parking. We also need to highlight the fact that there's a lot of families in the area. This is a family area. It's a lot of families with young children. They're not going to be catching the bus to go anywhere. They're using their own cars, their own personal transport. And we're at a stage where, and you might have seen this morning, that there aren't car parks left anymore. So if we're cutting off a bunch of car parks, we do know from who we've spoken to that people are more willing to give up their homes than give up their cars, that people are willing to move out of the area, potentially ourselves included. It's just we're looking at wanting to have our own family at one point, and it's just not possible if you can't have your own transport. And it just completely changes the dichotomy of the area. It changes who's going to live there. It's going to change the lifestyle that's provided there. And just from a completely also personal standpoint, my grandfather's 94. And we know that part of the proposal was to say that it would give ease of access, but he's not going to be hopping onto a bus anytime soon. He is willing for my dad to drive him to our place, and he's willing for my dad and myself to lift him up the stairs to get to my place. But if this proposal goes through, I'm probably not going to see him again. At our place, to be fair, but it's still a lot of our lifestyle is work, and then you want to get home and rest. It is becoming more and more difficult for us to travel out to the Hutt Valley to go visit him, and if he's able to visit us, that's all the better. Same with my two nephews. My family aren't willing to bring them out their way if they lose their car park access. They're not willing to take the bus themselves. They're not willing to negotiate finding car park however many 100 miles down the road it's going to be when you're fighting over car park spots at this point. It is the bigger risk that I find is that it's going to become to a point where if we lose those car parks, it will turn neighbour against neighbour. That we're having a small commodity of access, and people are people, and they're going to fight over car spots. They're going to refuse to give up their car spots. They're going to put obstructions to guarantee that their car park is there when they get back there. It's just, this is a risk that's obviously, and I think you've understood now that it's easily mitigated, either A, removing that car park, the bus stop, or we've canvassed the street ourselves. We have different proposals as well, which it sounds like you're now willing to engage with the community, and like hopefully would be willing to engage with the community to look at alternative solutions to this. But I think everybody else has put it far more eloquently than I can.
Yeah, and I do have a question actually about residents' car parking schemes. Would you think that, given there's, car parking is always going to be a scarce resource, do you think a residents' car parking scheme would work in your area? And if so, would priority be given to those who, don't have off-street parking? I
don't think that's the main solution to this. It's definitely a idea, but we obviously need to juggle ideas. I'm a service designer by profession. This is my bread and butter. This is what I do when I'm going to leave this meeting, is do this sort of work anyway. And you do need to have that engagement and weigh up options, have an options paper with select options, what's going to be the most favourable one for everybody involved. And obviously the best one is what's going to help the community and what's going to want people to stay in Roseneath. It's a beautiful area, but if they aren't able to park there, then you're going to lose those people.
Okay, thank you for that. We do have time for another question if there is one, but I'm not sure if the committee wishes to ask anything else. No, it looks like you've been very clear, so thank you for your time. All right, we would now move on to Catherine Strati. Thank you for coming today, and you're welcome to either be at the podium or the table.
I'll stand here.
And you have 5 minutes.
Public speaking isn't my forte, so apologies if I skip a beat. Thank you for having me here today. My name's Catherine. I rent at number 68 Elizabeth Street, and my mother and I own number 60. We've been residents in Mount Victoria for probably a good part of 30 years altogether. At first, I was quite sceptical when I saw the proposals for Elizabeth Street, given the council's tendency to sort of sideline any kind of negative feedback or feedback that pushes back against a suggestion. I was kind of pleasantly surprised at Renier and Iona and the efforts that have been made to engage with the residents directly on this street, which I think it sounds like these guys need a bit of help with. I understand at this particular meeting the intent is to address the resolution that is there now. It was wonderful to see that the council officers took the residents' feedback into consideration in regards to only removing one park on the street as opposed to the 20-odd that were proposed. Elizabeth Street is a very narrow street. It's primarily young families, elderly residents that rely on cars as a valid form of transport, as well as a lot of pedestrian activity and using buses. It's disingenuous to say that living that close to the city you don't need a car when you need a car for certain circumstances. We're very protective over our parking on that street because we do get a lot of interlopers from Hātepe and neighbouring suburbs and even within Mount Victoria that decide to park up on our street, don't pay for a residence parking permit, don't pay for a coupon. And it's probably one of the more militant streets in Mount Vic in regards to reporting this process. So you were very brave in some respects in taking this on with our street. It's imperative that even though it's not being addressed at this meeting, that the ratio is addressed, and I understand that that will be happening in October. A lot of us aren't asking for wholesale removal of coupon parking, but we do feel that the ratio could be addressed. It's great that the status quo is pretty much remaining at the moment with just that one removal, but when you've got 54 odd resident coupon parks, resident permits given to residents on the street, with only 22 allocated residence parks, with 49 coupon parks allocated, it kind of leads to this situation where primarily residents are parking in coupon parks anyway, when we can get one and we're not having to sort of waste emissions idling while someone who is not meant to be there pulls out. It wouldn't be hard to simply do a swap of the ratio. 22 coupon parks, I think, for the activity that happens on the street is more than enough to service tradies and visitors to the street. So that's where I'm coming from on that point of view. As I said, the only other thing that isn't really a big thing for me is there is some talk in regards to do the trees that are currently designed to be in triangular pits on the roadway need to be on the roadway. They are quite wide footpaths already, sort of 1.8 to 2 metres. If the tree is located in the pit on the footpath, that might also be a consideration for the council to think about. But apart from that, it's been really interesting watching the process. I've been pleasantly surprised because I don't have a lot of trust in the council listening to feedback, quite frankly. But yeah, thank you, Renia, and thank you, Iona.
Thank you. Do we have questions? We have time for one or two. Yes.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Catherine, for all the work that you put into this issue. Can you just be quite precise about how many coupon parks there should be for the tradies and the visitors, just to...
Well, at the moment, the ratio is 49 coupons and 22 resident. So I can't see why it can't be just a straight swap, so that there were 49 resident and 22 coupons, because even though there's been 54 permits to residents issued to the street, we understand that there's a give and take, and we're used to parking in coupon areas. So for my part, that's where I'm coming from.
Quick one from me. Do you think that it's reasonable to sort of restrict perhaps the coupons to one per household in the first instance, or to people that don't have off-street parking?
I think you need to look at how many permits issued on that street. You'll quite often say, come and live here. In a city, you don't need a car, but that isn't always, that's just naive to take that approach. I don't think we need to restrict it. I mean, personally myself, I'm quite happy with just a straight swap, because we need to service everybody. It's not a huge thoroughfare.
Okay.
So
thank you for that, all those views and feedback. Thank you. And especially for the positive feedback for our staff. Yeah. I know they do work hard on getting it as best they can. Thank you. Right, so we have 6 to go, so we're doing well. Thanks to everyone for being so concise. I now welcome Mark Davis. Is he online, or? And he may not be here. Okay, we'll wait and see if he comes later. Judy McCallum and Cheryl Robilliard. Thank you. And just wherever you feel most comfortable. A table or podium, whatever you prefer.
So do you have
a clicker?
Huh?
Oh, coming.
Perfect. That one. Okay. Kia ora tātou, my name's Judy McCallum, and along with Cheryl, we co-own a house in Elizabeth Street in the middle section, and you can see here a view of that street, of that section of the street. It's going to be upgraded along with the upper section very soon. As you can see, the street is lined with little heritage cottages, all of which, or most of which, are actually right on the street. So none of them, or very few of them, have off-street parking. So parking is obviously a big issue. and it has increased with the infill that's starting to happen with new builds coming into backyards of people's properties and subdivisions. The street is lined with very mature trees, and there are a variety of species: figs, olives, camellias, alders, and this big, beautiful ash there. It's the only one that's actually on the street. All the rest are on the pavement planted. At the moment, they're planted without a tree pit, so there are some issues with trip hazards. We're very happy with the council that they are committed to maintaining the canopy of the trees, of the greenery, but we would really like to encourage a slightly greater diversity of replanting of species rather than just 3 species that have been identified. The proposal that we want to talk to is planting the trees on the carriageway rather than on the footpath. The reason for this that has been given to us is that the council wants to prioritise pedestrians. As you can see with that view, pedestrians currently are able to walk at least 2 abreast on a pavement, even while there are large mature trees planted on the footpaths. So we actually would like the council to reconsider all the trees having to be put onto the carriageways for the following reasons.
Just if I can just say something there, we support that shift from to prioritise pedestrians, but don't agree in a one-size-fits-all approach. So I'm a landscape architect, so I'm used to looking at specific sites. So we're just asking for some flexibility in where trees are placed, particularly the smaller trees.
Yeah, and I'll come to that in just a second. One of the reasons that we would like a rethink on this is the fact that the tree gardens that will be on the carriageway represent this kind of situation, maybe slightly less extensive, but you can see what happens when large cars have to book end onto a tree garden. You get a lot of destruction, and currently there are no trees there, but if there was a tree there, especially one that was being established, the likelihood is that there would be damage. And the other issue, which is a health and safety issue, is that a wide, unencumbered or unimpeded footpath is a great invitation to scooters and mountain bikes that come tearing down the street from the town belt, and there's an incline, which means that they gather great speed and coming down the footpath rather than using the carriageway or the road, which has speed humps on it and therefore is less desirable for those vehicles. So a health and safety issue, particularly for the residents emerging from their homes. The issue that Cheryl mentioned is that the small trees, and this is the tree that has been identified to be planted on the carriageway as a small tree, is the fact that it's got a low canopy, and if it's on the carriageway, there will be likely to be visibility issues for drivers that are coming in and out of particularly the bookend parking. So again, a health and safety issue. Yes,
Final points, sorry. Thank you.
And so what we'd just like to suggest is that while the council is actually providing tree pits for all the trees, to mitigate the issue of trip hazard, the reasons for actually putting them onto the carriageway seems to be slightly misguided, especially when there are other issues of health and safety that may be impacted on. Thanks.
Thank you. And we've noted those views, and I'm sure they'll be it's not our decision on the trees, but we'll make sure those views get to the appropriate staff for their
and
consideration.
I think the thing is we suggest that we are open to compromise, but having one blanket approach doesn't seem to be that helpful.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Right, so we will now, is Mark here? Right, so we're moving to Pauline and Ching and Ian Robertson. Welcome to the table.
Kia ora. My name's Pauline Ching, and Ian and I have lived in the street since 1996. First of all, I'd just like to say I support everything that Cheryl and Judy just said, so well done to them. Ian and I support the prioritisation of pedestrians over vehicles in the city as a way forward. We also support the prioritisation of green space within the city. We agree that in 20 years, the way we move around the city needs to be different to the way we do now, and we need to start making these changes today or they aren't going to happen. We understand the conflict between car parking and planting, and the amount of car parking in the street does need to be maximised, as our neighbours have spoken to. Yesterday, we were presented with the half-metre wide semicircular gardens above the tree pits, which are to be situated on the street. They will extend 1 metre into the street. About this, I should have brought my tape measure. They would have separate wheel stops either side of them to stop cars getting too close to the trees. And I think this is a move in the right direction. So we have gone from the triangular ones to the semicircular ones. A drawing I prepared this morning, just quickly. No, that's good. No, the way you have it's right. I'd like to suggest that the nib edge of the garden above the tree pit be designed to also act as a wheel stop for cars rather than having a separate wheel stop. This would mean the gardens above the tree pit can be wider, which will allow for more low-level native planting as has been suggested, and we'd really like to promote that. This will not reduce the number of car parks. A half metre by 1 metre planter, so half metre wide by 1 metre into the street, which is the will not allow for very much low-level planting, if any, when the tree trunks, even when they're still small. Just looking at the time. In terms of the position of the planters in the street, I question if the smaller trees on the footpath would deprioritise the footpath for pedestrians, as has been suggested. If a half metre by 1 metre garden can be positioned on the road, could it not be reoriented? So, for instance, there's that amount on the road. Could we not do something in that orientation, which would still mean that we'd have the 1.6, we'd have about a 1.6 metre clear footpath, and yesterday we were told that it's a 1.5 metre that WCC works to as a minimum. As I said, we've lived in the street for the last 25 years alongside trees which have been positioned on the footpath, and even these trees have been damaged by vehicles. So we are concerned that the damage to them once they're relocated on the street will be even greater. We just worry that they're not going to survive. So overall, I guess what we would like to see is that some design thought has gone into the project with respect to the planting and the parking. And as Cheryl and Judy said, it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all project. So that what is built today does in fact work both today and in 20 years and further into the future. We want the planting to thrive rather than just survive. And if that means more design work up front, then I think that's something that should be considered. I'm happy to leave my little sketch that I did here and people can look at that.
And we do have a couple of questions. So first from Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. So given the traffic resolutions facing us to this morning, are you suggesting that there should be a bit more work on the design of Elizabeth Street?
Yes. I don't think it has to be a lot. I did this in half. I'm an architect, so I should say. I'm not a landscape architect like Cheryl. But this took me half an hour this morning. And I just think it's a matter of considering that, the planters don't all have to be identical. It might be the small trees have smaller ones. Maybe the small ones go on the footpath.
Okay.
Some bigger ones. And I just think, just simple things like, can a wheel stop be the edge of the planter rather than a separate? At the moment, it's designed as a planter with a wheel stop separate, which I actually don't think will look that great either.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Pennant.
Thanks for all your work on this issue. Just two quick questions. Were you reassured by Mr Farrell's point that he would look at the tree pit design, that there is still a bit of flexibility? And the other thing is, your comment at a high level was really interesting, that, you know, if we don't make the changes now towards a greener city, well, they'll never happen. Do you have a response to my point that this is the change that we are starting to make now, and that's what it's going to look like? But you've kept most of your parking, except for one.
Yeah, the first one was that Liam? Yeah. Yeah, no, I talked to him about it, and I just wanted to reiterate this. So he did talk about that, and yes, I just want to see it happen. And what was the second one?
The high level approach, that's exactly what we're doing through the city.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why your first scheme was your first scheme, and we've gone back to the, but it's car parking and planting. You're caught between a rock and a hard place, but we have to try and do both.
Okay.
And I think design will help with that.
Thank you very much for that well thought through submission. I think now we're moving to Scotty, am I correct? And online. Welcome, Scotty. Nice to have you. And you have 5 minutes. And that needs to include questions.
Cool. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Yeah, nice to be with you all. This will just be a quick submission. Myself from 2 Todman Neighbours Place in Brooklyn, and a group of us have partnered with the Brooklyn Community Centre and the Vogelmorn Bowling Club to bring back the Brooklyn Street Festival. This was initially held until 2009 in the Brooklyn neighbourhood, but it stopped because road closures became too expensive. So our trust has been able to put in the initial funds to pay for the road closures, and then Brooklyn Community Centre have met us with matching funds to help get the festival off the ground. We've had a really positive feedback from the local community on the idea of this starting again, and a lot of desire to participate. And we have had some good conversations with those on Harrison Street who would be affected, who feel really good about this happening on their street. We've also had the local pub 1852 offer their car park for all residents to relocate their vehicles there as well. We've received $3,000 of funding, have had committed $3,000 of funding from the WCC events team as well. So another part of your organisation is supporting this. And some exciting things so far. We've had Aniko Moore agree to be a part of the festivities, and it's just feeling really exciting. So we'd love to have your approval for Harrison Street to be shut down for the times requested, so that we can restore this awesome part of our community's richness and vitality.
Thank you. Well, that's nice and positive. Do we have any questions? We have a wee bit of time here, so are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Pannett.
Look, this is such great news. I remember those Brooklyn festivals. Do you have any suggestion about how we could reduce costs just to make it easier for you in the future? Because I know it is an issue.
Reduce, particularly you mean costs regarded to road closures?
Yeah, the road closures, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so those road closures, I mean, for a fairly small road that is a cul-de-sac, it's going to cost us over $5,000 to close it. So it's enormously prohibitive to things like this being able to happen. I don't know what can be done about that. I imagine the highness of the cost is that we have to go with someone who has the right compliance and the right certificates. But previous to that, the Brooklyn community had closed the road themselves. And so I don't know, wherever possible, there's probably a lot of this we could do safely, but simply are not able to do because of the compliance required. I'm not sure what can be done about that. Practically, the events team have said that in future years they would fund us to a higher level, but they were funding us at a lower level this year while they see that we can get it off the ground. So their support offsets some of those costs.
Thank you, and thanks for coming in. I think that's probably a pretty clear, a clear submission and clear point of view that you've given us. So thank you very much. It's useful. Moving on, do we have Ellen here or online? Welcome, Ellen.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for hearing us again. I've want to talk about a few of the traffic resolutions. In particular, I want to congratulate the Wellington City Council on the Elizabeth Street approach to coming up with a solution in that area. There's been a lot of consultation, there's been a lot of meetings, and I know lots of people have been involved in it, and there's still obviously some changes that people want to make, but I think it's a really good process to get community buy-in to some of these important changes. It might seem small on the surface, but for the people that live in those places, they're quite big. And I know it does take a bit of time, but I think it's worthwhile doing that sort of process in the long run, and for getting people more interested in supporting council initiatives and being involved. I think the Weka Bay one is one that a bit more community consultation would work out really well. And when people talk about parking, what I'm hearing as well is that people are talking about vehicle access. It's not necessarily personal car parking. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind as well, going through some of these. But so the traffic resolutions in particular that I wanted to talk about, well, one thing from the Elizabeth Street one, 1.5 metres is not the width that the council should be aiming at as a minimum. It should be 1.8 metres clear width on a footpath. That's the minimum that we should be aiming at. On Monorgan Road in Strathmore, I just wanted to make note that the bus stop has been moved further away from the school, so students will have to cross the road twice. So I don't quite understand why that was seen as a better solution there. I'm just making that point. On Marjoriebank Street in Mount Victoria, which I'm very familiar with, as is Councillor Young and Pennant, I cannot see how you can get a disability park on Marjoriebank Street to be safe. There is no way that a wheelchair-using driver can get out of their car, get their wheelchair and go right up and down Marjoriebank Street and find a curb drop down and be safe. There's just no way. That whole access to bats in some of those other places needs a big rethink. I would have thought that Roxburgh Street was much better. It's a much quieter street. There's buses that go up and down Marjoriebank Street, all sorts of traffic going up over the hill and far away. So please think safety if you're going to put mobility parks on that street. But the traffic resolution I especially wanted to focus on was the one in Pembroke Road at Hereford Street. And I think this was a real opportunity to build back better in this area. If you know this intersection, which I walked over in the middle of the night just recently, it's really, really wide. It's like walking across a motorway. It's probably a 4-lane width bit of intersection. I don't know why it is so wide at this area. It makes it very difficult to walk across. It makes it feel very unsafe walking across this intersection. The cars that come down Pembroke Road and whip round into Hereford Street have a lovely wide, fast corner, so they don't have to stop or slow down. I would really recommend that at this intersection that the road is narrowed. It's called traffic calming. It helps the drivers come up and stop and look properly both ways and be safer when they're making their manoeuvres, but it will make it much safer for people to walk along there, which we should be encouraging. And it's right beside that bus stop that's going to be changed. And I know that's the first thing that a traffic engineer will say, but what about the drainage? You don't have to change the actual contour of the road. You could just put some planters or something and make the road narrow down. So that's on the Pembroke Road, Hereford Street one. I think it's a real lost opportunity there. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. I do actually have a question, a very quick one. I was wondering myself about mobility parks. Do you think there's any scope to reduce the bus stops, the bus parking that's happening on the other side of, the inward side of Kent Terrace, in favour of a little bit more mobility parking there for people coming to the central city?
What bus stop on Kent Terrace? Sorry?
There's a lot of buses that park on Kent Terrace opposite Bats.
Oh, no. You'd have to do a lot of roadworks to make that accessible. That footpath's tiny, narrow, lumpy. I don't think that would work, and then you'd have to get across to the crossing and then across. I think that would be quite tricky. But
Okay,
I
so
defer
Roxburgh
to CCS disability or something on that.
Okay. I know our staff do think about lots and lots of things. I just wondered if that was a missed opportunity, but you're telling me no. Are there any other questions? Actually, we probably have run out of time, but no. Thank you very much for that valuable feedback, Alan, as always. Thank you.
Bye.
Right, moving now to our last submitter, Tam. Nyan, welcome. Either the podium or, yeah.
First time I came here, so thank you. Excuse me, because my English is a second language. I would like you, if you not understand, let me know. I got 3 issues, 3 points today, because I'm lucky. I live in Mountain Victoria 40 years, so I know a lot of problem. If the city council do the box in the tree, please holding in 1 more year, and we will work it out. Because if you put the tree in the box, the teenager, Friday night, Saturday night, they will move. They will enjoy the game. So please, hold on another 1 year. I will do in 5,000 or 15,000 to do whatever you ask. And look back another year after election. It's Mountain Victoria, Queen Street, Wellington. Please look after that. City Council, I know you work hard, but wait for another year. I didn't say you know. I support the lady number 78, 62, Elizabeth Street, and the other lady is a number 30, but I don't know. But you don't live in Queen Street, so you don't know. My house has been the dairy, has been broken 9 times in the window. And now the City Council do the food park leaking in my place. I have been repaired for that. And that's my issue. The first. The second one is the event by parade. I support the John and the Hillary and Sue, 3 neighbors there, and I speak on behalf of 2 gentlemen. You know Sir Mark, the gentleman donation $50 million for Bill Children's Hospital. He said the event by parade last year, the worker holding the time the building event by parade for the people bicycle, just like build another airport. So they waiting the time and the money. And suddenly this year, we did no notice at all. You started it again for event by parade. I point for you, compare with the Petoni, the Stratford, Penty, and you need the ZZ Park Street. You do this, why don't you move by the bus stop so the people and the children can easily go across, not the island parallel. Please, if you do the job, do properly. And the second one, I speak on behalf of the gentleman. He stayed in even by parade for 50 years. He haven't seen the worker use the time wreck easy. When I first came here, I just got 15 minutes for morning tea or afternoon tea, half an hour for lunch, that's all. But now you can look, you can camera, the even by parade work, so holding time. So I speak to you, 3 issues. The third issue is, you know, the Dixon Street, the communist umbrella in Dixon Street number 39 and 50. They holding like that. We are New Zealander, freedom. We need to holding no communists in here. But anyway, the economic and politics have to be combined. I know that. But could you please, City Council, stop that side communist flat in Dixon Street? Because I present here, this is the flat for 39 families in the soldier, so in this flat. We ending the war 30 April 1975, 48 years. Now they repeated again in the Ukraine, Russian invade Ukraine. So we don't like repeat again in New Zealand please, understanding. Because I suffer, I don't like repeat in New Zealand again, the communists. Listen to them, check on them, don't trust them at all. We need the freedom. So 3 issues, I present that. Could you please understanding? If not, I prefer this one. Conclusion, please holding the Martin Victoria Queen Street 1 more year. We will do 5,000 or 15,000, whatever you ask. And even by parade, we need the zigzag crossing the same Pīpiri. You know the Pīpiri? They got 3 stops, one the light and one zigzag. So we would like to ask you, if you do the job, do properly. Please, understanding?
Thank you, Tam. And I understand that you've made quite a few different points, and you've made points about Elizabeth Street, points about Evans Bay Parade, and points about a flag that's being shown in the central city. So we won't have jurisdiction over all of those things in this committee, but we're certainly listening to your feedback, and we'll pass it on. Thank you.
Yeah. Have you know this? I got something here for you.
Oh, okay. Maybe our staff can take that and distribute it to us at morning tea. Okay, well, thank you. I think unless somebody's turned up who was meant to come earlier and we've missed out, I think that actually does bring us to the end of our public participation. Thank you. I think it's been a very informative use of our time. So I do thank everybody who's come along, and all of your views have been noted. So thank you. We'll break for morning tea now, and we'll be back, please. We'll just have 10 minutes because we have got a big agenda to get through still. So we'll be back at 10 past, if that's okay. Does that allow item, the first item, which is traffic resolutions. We have had a lot of feedback about that today, this morning, but I'm going to be inviting the staff to the table. It's Paul Barker, it's Evandro and Megan to the table to actually introduce this whole paper. Some of these traffic resolutions have a little more technical complexity than others, so there might be some questions. And in particular, I'm looking for some advice on the Evans Bay one and the Roseneath one. And I will be bringing a slight noting amendment for your Elizabeth Street one. Okay, so who's introducing? Okay, Mr. Bourne.
Kia ora, councillors. Introducing the traffic resolution paper. We've got 11 proposed traffic resolutions within this paper. We have amended a couple of those post-consultation. We think we will kick off with the... Are we ready for Evans Bay, or do you want to? Yep, so we're just going to kick off with the Evans Bay traffic resolution because we've got a bit more information to provide you with, to provide some context to the decision you're being asked to make today.
Go to 2021. Okay, thanks for letting me speak to you today. So we're proposing to do some small changes to the Weka Bay traffic resolution to allow the cycleway to go through, and also to add some additional parking in for the residents. So the parking is on the hillside, the western side, north and south of the existing driveways. The current TR doesn't allow that parking to be installed. The other point that the residents wanted us to look at was there was an existing crossing facility that is designed and is currently there temporarily during the works, and that's we've had an independent review from Stantec come in last night to show that whilst that is safe, it's not necessarily in an ideal location. So you can see there that does provide a safe line of sight to the corner, but it does mean that the residents will need, from the bottom of Pāhia Street steps, will need to walk about 100 metres down to it, and then cross, and then walk another 100 metres back up to the parking on the other side of the road. What Stantec have suggested is that we put a pedestrian zebra crossing at the bottom of Pāhia Street steps on the south of the existing bus stop, but to do that we'd need to remove parking, and we'd also need to extend the footpath on the hillside. And so today we're just presenting to you our new TR to show that this TR is an improvement on the existing one for the residents, that we will then be able to give them additional parking, that will be able to give them a facility to cross the road, until a decision can be made about the full zebra crossing and whether that's an appropriate thing to do. So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Can I just add to that? So you can see on the drawing that's now being shared, and apologies for getting these up a bit slowly, the car parks that are shown there to the left of that crossing point to the pedestrian refuge on the hillside of the road, they are car parks that we have managed to retain. We've reworked the design so that they would be kept. The 2018 traffic resolution that the committee approved had no stopping all the way through there. So we've gone to some effort to retain those car parks. So the TR that's in front of you today for approval was asking that you no longer consider that as a no stopping area as previously approved by this committee, and now leave it unrestricted. So that creates those new car parks there. And at the other end of the bay, closer to the Pāhia Street steps, which I think is on the other image that we've shared, again we have redesigned the layout on the seaward side to accommodate some parking on the landward side to retain a car park for the residents of Pāhia Street steps, particularly for them. It's a short stay, it's a time limited 60-minute car park. So we would like today for a committee to consider approval of those 2 new parking areas. And I say new, while they're there today, they have previously been removed through a TR. We will give an undertaking to work further with residents of Pāhia Street Steps and Weka Bay on a future location of a crossing point. Work is underway at the moment on the construction of the landward side, the western side footpath, and that footpath is going to be needed to get to and from wherever that crossing point would be in the future. We think for now this is the best location, but we are happy to work with the residents of the bay to find a further location. We have had confirmed that this location is not going to work well as a zebra crossing, just because of some of the requirements around the landing spots for those, but there may be another site within the bay the zebra would work. So for today, we would like the committee to consider the removal of the previously approved no stopping on the western side of Weka Bay throughout the whole bay, and now just limit it to the sections as shown on this plan and keep parking where we can.
Thank you. There are some questions. I have some, but I'll go first to Councillor Calvert.
This is getting a bit confusing, to be honest. So you've said you've got a report from Stantec last night, but this has been prepared and showing up some things that could be improved. The resolution in front of us is in the papers that were produced last week.
So the Stantec report confirmed what our original engineer had decided, that the facility at the moment is safe as a crossing point, but they indicated that it does mean that the Pāhia Street Steps residents would need to travel down to it, cross and travel back up. And the Stantec report also confirmed that if there was to be a zebra crossing, that we wouldn't be able to put it in that location. So it confirms that the design is accurate and safe. They suggested that we look at putting a zebra crossing in a different location, but that means removing parking for the residents. Yeah.
So would it not be better just to place, to do what you say you're going to do? Why do we need to consider these resolutions right here and now, given that you need to do some more engagement with the local residents?
So if we don't approve this TR today, we go back to the existing approved TR, which is the 2018 one, and that doesn't allow us to add the parking in for the residents.
There's some time pressure, is that right?
Yeah.
Because
it's 2018 was 5 years ago.
So that was when the original TR was approved for the entire. I believe it was approved from Oriental Parade right through to Greta Point.
But it hasn't been implemented as yet.
No, but it was approved on the concept of the entire cycleway, and the cycleway was constructed in 3 parts.
But given it's been 5 years and we haven't implemented, what's
Councillor
the delay?
Calvert? Councillor Calvert, I can answer that. So, I mean, the traffic resolution was put in as part of the original design. After consultation with the community, it was decided to put more car parks back in, which has resulted in the need for this TR to be approved to allow for those additional car parks to go back in. Yeah. And there are time pressures associated with construction.
I appreciate time pressures, but we're talking about 5 years later and making sure that we have, I think, as some of the submitters said, why don't you make sure you've got a holistic, comprehensive design to make sure everything does fit in as best as possible, noting that we can't always please everyone all the time. And that's what
I think that's what our Stantec report last night confirmed to us, that our design, it is a complex site with many factors, and that our design does meet the requirements, and the compromises we've made at the moment are our best case. Yep.
But would it be fair to say that while the design that we've got with the crossing point that you've got is safe, it's probably not meeting the desire lines, and that was the point I think that came through from the submission.
Correct, yeah, correct. And I think that we can relook at an additional crossing facility in the future to the south of the bus stop. It's outside of the scope of the cycleway project, but it's certainly something we can go back and look at.
Okay, so if we were to approve this today, what we'd be doing is approving it with a note perhaps that that the crossing position is going to be reassessed. And
yes, correct, because we can't install a full zebra crossing where the crossing point is at the current location. Yeah.
But noting the desire for a pedestrian crossing rather than a pedestrian refuge, and just seeing what can be done to align better with the desire lines.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Right, are there further, is that sort of clear to everybody? So there's a project that they'd like to start with that the project could carry on with the noting that.
Yeah, I think I just want to make it clear that if we approve the 2023 TR, it will be better for the residents than if we can't install that parking for them. If I have to put no stopping lines all down there, it will make the situation difficult for them. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
It's really just about engagement with the residents, and in recent times, given the feedback that's come back, what sort of engagement has happened with them, and in terms of bringing them together?
Yep. So we've had our principal engagement officer has gone out with myself and a member of the delivery team to site, and we've had on-site meetings on 3 occasions. We've also had feedback sessions with proposed designs sent out in hard copy, and then had a feedback loop with the residents, and that was really as a result of finding out that they were unhappy with the current design. And I think that I acknowledge that you've said there's a gap between the 2018 original concept design for the full cycleway and the last piece of the puzzle, or piece of the construction puzzle that we're getting to now. And I think it's due to that time that we've gone back and we've said to the residents, hey, let's do the right thing here and put some more parking in and make these changes for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So perhaps I could just to sum up, the plans as we're seeing today in terms of parking has certainly been done in full engagement with the community in Weka Bay, and we've got to this point as we think a big improvement on what was previously those first plans, with the exception of where the style and location of the safe crossing point. That's the bit that we haven't found resolution on yet. We think we can still work that way, but today we're not asking you to decide on where the refuge or crossing point or where that would be. We're asking you to approve the parking that goes back into the scheme, which would enable us to then construct around that.
Okay, and with the acknowledgement too that if it was for some types of crossing point, there might be a further impact on parking down the line, but we would deal with that when we come to it.
So either way, that would be subject to a further round of engagement. It would be different enough from the current engaged scheme that we probably couldn't ask you to do that by amendment because we would be changing it significantly. There would be more car parks coming out, and it would be subject to further consultation with the wider community anyway.
So I'm personally comfortable with where we've got to. I mean, no process is utterly ideal, but I do know that there has been engagement in the past. We've got to this point, and it looks like there needs to be a bit more engagement going forward. So, yeah.
Madam Chair, can I just add one point that the refuge facility that's shown there cannot be constructed now because the findings is that we need to look more on the safety side in terms of pedestrian how they use it. So until that crossing point is reviewed, that refuge island should not be constructed as shown.
Okay. I wanted to ask one more question. So I thought the submitter made a good point in terms of context. What sort of thought has been given to the fact that this is a heavy and dangerous goods route, and that the standard distances for sightlines and stopping might not actually necessarily be?
I'm going to refer to the transport engineer for this. Yep.
That would be part of considering where we locate that crossing in terms of sight line, the distance that they have to cross, whether there can be an island or where they land. So those would be a consideration on the tracking path for the vehicle, the size of the vehicle, things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions on this particular one, or we'll probably have further questions on some of the others perhaps, but are there any other questions on this TR 2366? No. Okay. Can I have some feedback, please, just on the Roseneath? Oh, welcome back, Councillor McNulty. Can I have some feedback from officers on the Roseneath bus relocations and dotted yellow lines? My question on that is, there's been a suggestion that there needs to be more work done on that. Can we please have a bit of a response from officers on that?
Yes.
Yep.
So we had a discussion this morning with MetLink, further to the feedback received from the public. They are comfortable to have more engagement with the community. So their suggestion is to have a new engagement with residents of the road, and their recommendation would be to defer this traffic resolution at this stage for further discussion with residents of the road, provided the feedback received today.
Okay, that sounds to me like quite a good idea. And I'm just wondering if there were, just another question this time. We'll leave that one. Unless, does anyone else have any questions on the Roseneath one?
Thank you, and that sounds a good solution. But just in terms when there is engagement with the residents on the bus stops, can there be some consideration done sort of from a more holistic perspective as well? If there's, just from the traffic impacts, because often when we make a change in one area, it impacts somewhere else. I'm not saying to do, the whole suburb, but whether there could be a view as well as part of that?
Yeah. As from the council, we have a slightly different process than MetLink has in terms of engagement with the public. We are currently improving that process, so we have been having some discussions between us from the traffic engineering team and them regarding the location of the bus stops and the impacts of traffic that will generate. So, for instance, this location, it was discussed with us previously, and it was supported by us because, for example, Alexandra Road and Opok Road, it's located at an intersection at the bus stop. So initially, when we had the engagement with MetLink, we did support that because of visibility constraints at the intersection. So we have been having discussions with them to try to have a proposal that aims.
So the engagement would include Wellington City Council. It won't just be left to MetLink for this next round?
We are starting now to have a pre-engagement with them prior to the consultation with the public.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, just before we leave that one, I had a question I wanted to ask. I did drive that route this morning to try and understand the actual, what was going on with the actual 3D situation. And I did notice there didn't appear to be any bus stops where we've got the big investment in the children's playground up Alexandra Road. And I wonder if in your conversations with MetLink, you could ask if it's possible to have a very basic stop to accommodate families that want to go without a car to that, that facility we did invest quite a bit of money in.
Yeah.
So just something to add to the conversation from me as a ward councillor.
Madam Chair, just to add to that is that MetLink withdrawing this TR is also gives them the opportunity to rationalise or review the bus stop that has been raised, the distance between bus stops and
Yes, I think there's an opportunity there because what I did notice is there's big gaps without any bus stops at all.
Yes, so it's part of that re-engagement.
Including that Alexandra Road obvious place destination. Yeah. Any further questions on that, TR? Not that one. Oh, okay. You go for it.
I've got questions on the Imlay Crescent one and the Pembroke Road one. And again, it really just centres around engagement. So the Imlay Crescent, I know we just had one submitted turnout. I was a bit concerned that with people outside of the area submitting. And I just wonder whether the residents actually really understand the implications of the changes and whether there would be an opportunity to perhaps defer this to enable, with local councillors happy to assist with the Residents Association, but whether there is an opportunity to say, look, have we got it right here?
Councillor Calvert, I think what we are planning to do is a low-cost scheme, which means we have to tighten the radius and that. But because this project doesn't sit high on our minor works, so we're addressing those higher priority minor works. But in the future, I understand that we can physically build out the curb, but that doesn't stack up in terms of on the crash that we have at other locations. So the priority puts this quite low, and we need to do something now rather than wait.
Okay,
for it to
so
come.
there would still be even if this goes through, there's still an opportunity for residents to get together and say, look, we've got some ideas to doing this a bit differently.
We're always open to ideas, and this is just one step towards making this intersection safe. And
Okay, and then the other one was the Pembroke Road one, and is that being driven by Metlink again, or is that sort of have Wellington City Council been heavily involved with this design?
This is purely a council initiative.
Oh, it's a council one.
To tidy up the sight lines where buses should stop and things like that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm going to move on to Elizabeth Street just very briefly, because it was lovely to actually hear some of the positive feedback about the work that's been done. And I know that there's been extensive staff hours and community hours. But I guess my question about that, I was going to bring just a noting amendment around the just the balance of the, a point was made, have we got the balance right around the coupon and the residence parking? And I was wanting to bring a noting amendment that will be monitored, and if there's any need, if there's need, some further advice can be provided. Is that acceptable to staff?
That's acceptable because the work has already started because we knew early on that there's a request to increase the number of residence parking spaces. But before we do that, we've got to understand how the spaces are being used and what are the impacts after the change is made.
Okay, and I do trust, that you do a lot of work and do your research. So, I'm coming from a position that it possibly is okay the way it is, but we'll keep monitoring it, and if needs be, come back. Councillor Pennant.
Thanks. Can we just change the advise to advice? Sorry, that's just a small typo. And sorry, we probably have the right people, just because you're engineers, not arborists. Just the last point, because we've done a lot of canvassing now over every issue, is just about the diversity of tree species, given that there are 3, and it's a fair enough point, but we are going to obviously doing revegetation on the town belt. Is there any view that we could have some flexibility and introduce a few more? Or is it just too late now?
Madam Chair, I've invited Rainier Ackerman, who's the project manager for Elizabeth Street, to answer that question.
Thanks. Yes, so we've done extensive consultation, as you know, with regards to the trees and types of trees, and we've received a lot of submissions in that regard. So we've went through the whole process to whittle them down to these specific 3 tree species. The street is very passionate about their trees, obviously, and the tree selection. These 3 trees seem to be the happy medium that everybody has accepted. I wouldn't want to change that by adding more options at this stage that might open up a new, a bunch of issues with the residents. So currently we have very few residents with issues with the current tree selection. So we'd like to stay with that.
Are there further questions on any matters in the paper? The traffic, and I'm sorry, but the traffic resolution for Elizabeth Street, of course, it's been pointed out to me, is actually a separate paper. It's not item 2.1. So we've mixed those up a little bit. I'm just asking for a noting amendment along the lines of, noting that further work will be done on this position and type of a safe crossing facility in Wika Bay. And that's acceptable to the staff, something like that?
Yeah, we're working on that.
Okay. Okay. Are there any further questions, or shall we move to introduce it and debate? Councillor Pennant.
Sorry, thank you. Given I'm not on the committee. Marjorie Banks is my neighbourhood. I live right by it. Did you think that the concerns raised by submitters had any validity?
With regards to one of the feedback received was regarding the number of mobility parking spaces. The current design, it's designed for only one mobility parking space. However, we do have the opportunity to keep monitoring how that parking space is going to operate and if there will be a demand for more mobility parking spaces, there's an opportunity to come up with another traffic resolution and increase the capacity.
You wouldn't put them into Roxburgh Street? You just think it's too inaccessible?
Yes. That was initially considered to be on Roxburgh Street. We, from the traffic engineering team, we did an assessment. However, at the location where the parking would be does not meet the criteria in terms of accessibility because there's a slope on the road, so that would be unsafe for mobility users.
Right, sorry. There's always a lot to think about in the detail. So have we come to the end of the questions? Yes. Thank you very much to officers. We know how much work goes into this. Thank you. I'm now going to move the officers' recommendations with the, now we're renumbering things. I'm making a note about the further work to be done on the safe crossing facility at Wicker Bay. And then that will be number 2, and number 3 will be what's currently number 2. And we are noting that we're actually taking out approval of 3H, which is Alexandra Road, Roseneath. That will be deferred, so we will not be voting on that today. Is that the way we're doing it? Just removing it. I'm personally comfortable to move all of the rest. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McNulty. I don't think there's a huge need to debate this. We have had, a lot of feedback from the public. I know how much work does go into these, and along with the, sometimes the feeling that perhaps we haven't got it quite right, there's also been quite a lot of acknowledgement of the work done by our staff. It is a challenging thing to get roads. There is a limited amount of road space, particularly in roads around Wellington, and it is very challenging to do the very best that we can and move the emphasis away from motor vehicles towards our active modes, our public transport, and our walk, also the need, of course, for green space, which is illustrated in Elizabeth Street. So it's a challenge, but on the whole, I think our staff basically mostly get it right. So I'm quite comfortable to move these without too much further need to speak. I'll open it up for debate from everyone else. Councillor McNulty, do you wish to say anything as seconder? No? Is there debate from anyone else? Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, for making that noting one for Evans Bay. And look, pleased to see that there has been engagement activities with the local area. A little bit concerned that we're getting a report in relation to this area last night, or officers did. They referred to this Stantec report, given that there was traffic resolutions passed in 2018, and there has been a lot of since engagement that we are getting a report, or officers are getting a report the night before. So, and also 5 years to do something with a traffic resolution that we passed does seem an extraordinarily long time. And I'll just probably note that we've got similar traffic resolutions coming up for the Golden Mile next week. So, if we're going to pass traffic resolutions, they've got to be expected to be implemented in their time. Otherwise, why would we even bother doing them? Pleased to see that Chater Street, and this is one where we can really see where things come from when communities are engaged with, and I know there's been a lot of engagement by our officers in this area with the cycling community, with the local residents association, and so, whilst it probably hasn't happened as quick as some might have liked, there's been really good engagement. So really keen to see that supported. Imlay Crescent, I'm a bit concerned about this one, and I probably won't vote for it because when we're making a significant change to a whole street, and given the impact of the recent cycleway that's going in and around that area up on Kenya Street, I think we do really need to think about having a parking management plan for these type of areas. We've talked about having parking management plans. We put in a strategy to enable those to happen several years ago, but we've never actually really been able to resource it fully, and we're still waiting for parking management plans in some key areas. One of them is in Wadestown. I know that's one that's been waiting for some time. So when we're making significant changes, and for this one is a whole street, I think there needs to be a bit more engagement with the local community, because I get a sense that we haven't had a lot of feedback, but when those lines go in, I think the council will receive feedback at that point. So I won't be supporting the Imlay Crescent one, but happy to support all the others. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Is there any other further debate? No, just in my brief right of reply, I did want to take the time to add up how much work we do in this committee, because it really is quite astonishing the amount of work we're getting through.
We can do a summary for the end of the year.
But we will do a summary maybe for next time after we've reached the end of the full financial year, because we have been very, very busy lengthening bus stops, putting in dotted yellow lines, creating safe crossing facilities, improving intersections, and doing a huge amount of detailed work. So I know to the average person looking in, it might seem very boring, but for the people whose roads and neighbourhoods we're improving and changing, it really, really matters, and we do our best to get it right. Bearing in mind we can't keep everyone absolutely 100% happy all the time. That just doesn't happen, but we do our best. With that, and maybe a little bit to respond to you, Councillor Calvert, yes, we could always do more engagement, but at the same time, we do engage, and we are very transparent about what we do. And, most people that come here do feel that they get listened to, even if they don't get exactly what they want. So I think yes, it could always be better, but I think actually, I say again that I think our staff do a very good job. With that, I shall put it to the vote. And do you want something taken separately? You did, didn't you? Which is 2A. So we'll do 1 and 3 together. It didn't end up that way, sorry. That was an idea that didn't happen. That's fine. So we'll do 1 and 3, and I need to find my clicker. Here it is. And that's carried. We will do the one that you want to take separately, which was 2A. We'll do that now. And that's carried by majority. And then we'll do the rest of 2. Everything else. Been carried. Now, I don't know if we need the staff back. There wouldn't be any more further questions on Elizabeth Street, I wouldn't think. So if everyone's okay, we'll just move straight into introducing that paper. I'm happy to introduce it. You can't second. Would someone like to second it? Thank you, Councillor McNulty. I don't think, again, there's too much to say, except I know that there's been an awful lot. Just to introduce this, there's been an awful lot of work done on this, but that's partly because it did involve a planting plan as well as just changes to the road. So, you know, I'm sure it's going to look just gorgeous when it's done, and I'm sure it's going to work really well too. But as you will note in my point 3, there will be a little bit of ongoing monitoring just to see if we have got that balance right. Staff have, submitters have suggested we haven't, but we'll wait and see, and I'm very confident we'll get advice if it needs to be changed. Councillor McNulty, would you like to speak to this? Councillor Pennant.
Thank you for giving me some space, Chair, because I was the councillor that led on this project. So I just want to give a massive thanks to the residents because they've put in hours of work into this issue, and also to our wonderful staff who show why we need a public service. So Renier, Liam, Suntek, Sitesh, Vida, and Sarah and Ben have been great too. So thank you very much. So yes, we have done an enormous amount of work. The street has long had complaints about, you know, uneven footpaths and being very narrow, blocked sumps and leaves and all the rest of it, because they are lucky enough to have trees in their street. So the officers went out with a contentious proposal of removing 21 car parks that did not meet with support from the community. So the credit to the officers for wheeling that right back. So there's only one loss of car park. And doing, like, they did so much work. They got fire engines to come in and drive in just to make sure that that there could be that access. We've had enormous amounts of time on trees. Our chief executive says that that's one of the most contentious issues in local government. This was absolutely proved to be the case. The speed bump has been looked at, manoeuvring of vehicles. It's all been sorted through. I acknowledge that not all of the residents' concerns have been met, but I think we've gone a huge way to meet those concerns, and it is going to look great. Just a few outstanding issues and lessons learned. The parking allocation, I think, is a bit unreasonable. Like, basically, most of the people parking there are residents after the evening, so we don't need so much coupon parking. Now, what I have said, however, to the residents, knowing, as you know me so well, is that $195 a year for the privilege of parking near your house is too low. And, you know, that is a wider issue we need to look at, whether we are charging within the limits that we can under the legislation and whether there needs to be further change. The native trees, look, we all wanted native trees, but they just did block out the sunlight, so still just a bit of work to see if we can get maybe another kōwhai in. That might help. The trees on pavements was a big issue that was very contentious, and I think the council officers and myself have stood strongly on that pavements are for walking, but there is a bit of flexibility to look at the placement of the tree pits when it comes time to actually doing the work. And just finally, just some lessons learned. I think in retrospect, I said to the officers at the time, look, we'll organise a street meeting once your proposal's been out. What we should have done is gone out and just had a bit of a street meeting with the residents first, and then that would have helped with the proposal, because we basically took up more time designing a proposal which was then rejected. So that was just a good learning thing for me. It did get to be a bit of a complicated project because it was a transport project, but it was also an urban development one, and so the staff did work very hard on that, but I guess the community just felt there were a few little gaps in the communication, so it's just, when we're doing those kind of projects, it's just really important to keep that up. And the last point, this is disappointing for me, it's really expensive to do this. It's cost a lot of money, because I want every street to have trees. I don't want it just to be, a few, and it is costly. And, as climate change really hits, we do need to do a lot more greening, and that will be a very challenging issue. But I think we've learned some lessons there about what kind of trees and how they should be planted to make sure that you don't get damage to infrastructure, which is one of the drivers of this project. But look, thanks. I think it's a good outcome, and I'm very grateful for all the work done. And of course, I will acknowledge our colleague, Councillor Young, who was behaved in a very appropriate manner, but offered very appropriate, observed strict boundaries, but did offer some useful local intelligence about just how the issue was to be managed. Kia ora.
Wonderful. Any further debate? Oh, yes. Okay. We have got a few to get through.
That's fine, but this is democracy. Councillor Pannett, yes, I agree. I like your comment about it would have helped having a street meeting first, and I think that's what we need to think about for any other traffic resolutions coming up. And I do have Emily Crescent in my mind that when we're proposing something that impacts a sort of a whole street, or that we actually try and just meet with residents first up and just say before the resolutions are worked through and all that detailed engineering goes into it. And I just would like to also add that for this committee, and Chair, you acknowledged in the previous paper that this committee is doing a lot more work, and these traffic resolutions are actually getting quite complex, and the whole range before, there was quite a range of them. And I really would like to see, as part of the process of bringing these together to this committee, that there is an off-site briefing where we actually go and visit them as a group. I know we can drive there individually and have a look, but we're looking at it through our own eyes without necessarily all the background, not the background of our officers. So that's a request that I make for this committee, is to actually, for officers to arrange site visits, and we know when we've been on them, it's enabled our understanding to be, especially if you don't come from the area, enables us to have a better sense, a more cohesive sense of what's being planned. Thank you.
Yeah, just a brief right of reply. Actually, I agree. I don't think it needs to be all the time, but there are some situations where it is hard to understand the complexity, especially with our three-dimensional topography. So, I think, yes, that's something we can keep in mind. We won't do it all the time, but sometimes, yeah. Okay, so with that, let's go to the vote. Been carried. So the community leases, I'm going to ask Councillor Paul, first of all, we'll have some officer advice if we need it. Do we need, that's right. Hopefully we can.
Yeah, I can do that.
So, Siobhan, are you going to be introducing the leases paper, or?
I will just briefly introduce it, then hand over to our wonderful officers to provide you with an overview, and then you can ask questions.
Kia ora koutou. So this paper recommends for council to, for this committee to refer the new ground leases for Netball Wellington Centre and Kibuni Tennis Club to council for final approval as per the Wellington Town Belt Act. The second is approve a new ground lease for Island Bay Tennis and Squash Club for a term of 10 plus 10 years, with subleases for Brooklyn United Football Club and Island Bay Services Club. We just wanted to highlight an area of non-compliance under the Reserves Act that is happening at the Island Bay Tennis and Squash Club at the moment, and that's with the Services Club, who have been operating 3 gaming machines for over 30 years at that site. Officers have negotiated a transition period with the club for the removal of these machines by 31 December 2024. Annalise has done a great job in negotiating that from their original term of wanting a transition period of 10 years. So we think we've come up with an excellent resolution for council to remove 3 game machines in our community. Annalise is here to help answer any questions that we might have.
Are there any questions? I think we did send around an email with your excellent briefing notes, so I think we probably have had a chance, we've even had a little chance to discuss it. Yeah. So I don't think we have any questions, do we? No, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to invite Councillor Paul to move it, and someone will second.
Just super briefly, Annalise, thank you so much for negotiating that. When we introduced the sinking lid policy last term, we knew that we wouldn't be able to get rid of all Class 4 gambling machines in our community, but that we knew that a sinking lid would be a long-term policy, and that small moves like this over time would decrease the presence of those machines in our community. So thank you for that negotiation, and I'm really happy to move this paper. Kia ora.
And I'm happy to second it because I've also been an opponent of too many pokie machines, and I knew Councillor Paul would greet this with great, enthusiasm, because I've seen these little pokey dens and people addicted to the pokies, and quite honestly, they're not really, if everyday people went in there and saw it, I think they'd actually be a bit shocked. So I'm glad that we've got a plan to remove these, and I'm glad the club was actually very accommodating about it, and I think it's a very good outcome. Of course, the other leases are also good outcomes as well. So thank you for the work. Is there any further debate on this one? No, okay, we can put this one to the vote. It's been carried. Thank you very much. Now we'll be moving on to the proposed road closures, and Maria and colleague, sorry.
Sean.
Sean.
Want me to introduce it?
Would you like to introduce it, Siobhan, or
happy for Sean too?
Oh, Sean, we're happy for you to introduce this if you're willing. Thank you.
There you go. We are bringing a request for 2 road closures to you. I'll speak briefly to one of them, then I'll ask Maria to talk to the other. The one that we are bringing to you, one of the ones that we're bringing to you is a repeat, and that is the Wellington Marathon. This had been previously approved at this committee due to recent events around Shelley Bay, the fire and the subsequent road closure. Organisers have done very, very well to come up with an alternate course. What that does mean is that whilst no other roads will be impacted, the closures on those roads that were previously approved will just be for a few hours longer, so we'd like to have that approved. And then the other event we have is the one that Scotty spoke to earlier, and which Maria will talk about, being Brooklyn.
The Brooklyn Community Festival on Saturday, the 11th of November, between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. And rain day they're wanting is 18th of November for the same time. So they're going to have a children's family earlier, and then at the evening they'll have a more adult entertainment going on.
Thank you. Just for clarity, we did have some complications to do with the exclusion zone that we've now got around Shelley Bay because of the fire. Can you just explain again, so that we've got it on the record, what's been decided there?
So in terms of the original turnaround point for the marathon would have participants move past the zone on Shelley Bay Road where the actual fire has taken place. That road has since been closed, and so it means that the participants are unable to actually progress past that point. What organisers have been able to do is they've been able to bring back a turnaround point further back from the closure, and essentially what they're going to ask for the full marathon is they're going to put them around the course twice, so it becomes a bit more of a there and back and a there and back again. Sounds like a good compromise under the circumstances.
Are there any other questions? No, I've asked, I think it was actually Ben that I asked to move this one, but it's open to anyone.
No, happy to move it.
Yeah.
No, very simple. These are some fantastic events. It's unfortunate we've had to work around Shelley Bay, and that's looking like it will take several months to do so, but appreciate the officers working quite quickly to identify some alternative solutions there and make the event still ready to go ahead, so happy to move.
And do we have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Paul. Doesn't need to speak. Is there any other debate on this? No, great events, great work. Let's vote. Lovely, that's carried. Now, we're moving to item 2.5, which is the private right-of-way in Johnsonville. Do we?
Okay, happy to have Carleen join us. This paper is asking for agreement to name a private right-of-way that's being developed off Hindmarsh Street.
Yeah, Carleen, did you want to say a little bit about the background on this one? Oh, Carleen, thank you. So can you just explain a little bit about the background to this? It's in the paper, but just in particular the interaction you've had with Mana Whenua on this one.
Kia ora. In this particular instance, Mana Whenua were engaged with by Kainga Ora. They have engaged specialists in that space, and the advice that I had received was that this was fine.
Well, I love the name. I'm going to ask Pauiwi Hohaya to introduce it, to move the paper.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to move this paper. I want to thank council officers for the work that you've done on it. Te ara tauhou. I've got to say I learnt something new reading this paper, that the tauhou came over here, migrated over here from Australia in the 1850s. I suspect that's why, I don't know this for sure, but that's possibly why the manu was named Tauhou, because that literally means new arrival. So, and for me, when I think of new arrival, I think manuhiri as well. So it's a very fitting name for the right-of-way, and it also is consistent with our tūpiki ora te reo Māori strategy, where we're looking to re-indigenise our place names and our landscapes, and I support the paper.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Paul? You don't need to speak. Is there anyone else who'd like to say anything? Councillor Nuruddin? Abdurrahman? Councillor Abdurrahman? You're fine, okay. All right. Well, I think, yeah, we'll vote on it. It's very diligent. And that has carried. All right, so finally we'll just move to the actions tracking and the forward program together. And do we have any comments? No, I do have actually a question. There's just one thing in there that's hanging, is out. Yeah. Sorry.
Very pleased to be able to introduce the actions tracking and forward program. And I have to say I am quite pleased with the action tracking, that we are making progress in closing quite a few of these off. So we will hopefully see more progress on that next month as well.
Thank you. I did have just one question, and it has been good progress, and I'm pleased that there's hardly anything outstanding, but there's just one thing hanging over from 2021, which is just a road stopping and land exchange. I don't expect an answer now, but I just wonder if we could find out how close that is to completion for
Yes,
next
we can.
time.
They do take a long time, so but I'll find out and get an update for next
Because
time.
apart from that, it's pretty much when our committee started, and we're got quite a bit of green and already, which is good. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Calvert.
I noticed on the forward program we've got Thorndon Quay traffic resolutions that were oral hearings in August. I wonder whether we could arrange a site visit prior to those oral hearings.
It's a good idea. We'll do that, I think. Certainly ask. Yeah, good. Any other comments, questions? No? All right. Do I have a second? I'm going to choose Councillor Calvert. Are you happy to second this?
Yes, I will.
Good. All right. So moved and seconded. Let's put it to the vote.
Hang on. You didn't ask me, did I want to speak? Jeez. So,
losing the plot at the last minute.
And not to change your mind. I'm not, look, yeah, I support this, but just I want to reiterate that it's important that elected members get to see in situ some of the traffic resolutions being proposed. I will also note that we're hearing oral hearings, and then 2 weeks later we are hearing the resolutions for the Let's Get Welly Moving Thorndon Quay. I get very nervous when there's so short a time in between, because when we have hearings, the papers for the meeting 2 weeks ahead are actually out a week before. So that basically means there's only a week for officers to contemplate what they may have heard additionally in the oral submissions to make any changes, and this is a significant area. So I will just note that I have concerns on the 2 week difference between the hearings and us considering the resolutions. And I do also question, given that Golden Mile traffic resolutions are going to full council, yet we are getting the Thorndon Quay ones to this subcommittee. I am actually quite concerned.
Yeah, okay. That's something that I could probably respond to a little bit, in that the Golden Mile, of course, is a far bigger project, and the Thorndon Quay one has been flagged for quite a long time. We've actually had it on, the design's basically been floating around for quite a while. But anyway, we will get to that when we get to it. We're always open to hearing from other councillors in this committee too, and taking their views into account. So, right, let's vote on the actions, tracking and the forward program. It has passed unanimously. So that, I think, brings us to the end of our meeting. Thank you for everyone's attention, and it's been quite a long meeting, but we got there. So I will now say the closing karakia. Unahia, unahia, unahia ki te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatū. Koe rā I rongo, whakara ilia ake ki runga, kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia.